Hello, how you doing? I'm Brian Smith here with John Matthews, and we're here for a podcast, our Five Things podcast. And John has got an extensive business background, does consulting for major corporations, and a long history of business. So I think he can add a lot of value to us today. And excited to have you, John. Thank you for having me and having us out to your beautiful home. And why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got on your field?
Well, I had a entrepreneurial father who beat into my head. He said, "John, if you're ever going to make it, start your own business." And so I put a goal out there that I wanted to do that at age 45, and I worked in the corporate world for 20 years or so. And at age 42, I actually started my own business as a management consultant. So I'm 57 now, so 15 years into it. Gray Cat Enterprises is still alive and kicking.
Awesome.
So
So obviously a long background with corporate America, so you're extremely familiar with cultures and good things, bad things, and that sort of thing, which kind of probably led you to where you're at.
yeah, it's great. I work with a lot of Fortune 500 companies, and so they can appreciate the varied background that I've had, not only in the corporate world where I've kind of been there and done it and actually had to execute the way that a corporation executes. But with my client base over the years, I pick up the best of the best. I've worked with Starbucks and Quiznos, and I've worked with some large companies like that, Potbelly Sandwiches, a lot of food service, entrepreneurial or kind of entrepreneurial, larger companies, spirited companies. I've also worked with a lot of oil companies and convenience store companies and retailers and product manufacturers. And you always pick up the best of the best practices. Like they do things here at Starbucks this way, they do things over at Campbell Oil this way.
That's
And
awesome.
you kind of combine them all together, and you kind of spit out a better way of doing it for the particular client that you're working on.
Well, that's awesome. You're getting educated along the way as well, just by learning and becoming more valuable every day. I think that's awesome. So you're from the Midwest originally.
Yep, grew up in Detroit, went to Michigan State, left Detroit in the mid 80s, went to Denver for a couple of years, and then went to Chicago and spent, believe it or not, 23 years in Michigan and 23 years in Chicago
Okay.
before I moved down here about 10 years ago.
All right. So hardcore question: if you only had to choose one, Blackhawks, Carolina, Hurricanes, or the Red Wings, you can only choose one.
The Hawks, without a doubt.
Blackhawks.
Blackhawks.
I thought you were going to say that, but I was just curious.
Without a doubt.
I was just curious.
Even though I work for the company that owns the Red Wings, Little Caesars owns the Red Wings, the Ilitch family owns the Red Wings, I still am a Blackhawks fan.
Awesome. Well, one of the things we talked about before getting on camera here today, because honestly, John, you have so much that you can talk about. We were trying to figure out what would be the best value add to consumers or to people out there, and I think we came up with, if you're thinking about getting in business for yourself, you're an entrepreneur starting a business. I think we came up where you came up with, really, that really that's where you wanted to spend some time today.
Yeah, I think it's very applicable. I've worked with Fortune 500 companies, and I've been an entrepreneur, and to me, it all comes down to: do you have a plan? Do you have like a strategic plan? And I'm actually surprised. I'm not saying that the corporation, the Fortune 500 company doesn't have a big plan, but when you get down to the divisional level, they don't really have a roadmap that they are following to say, here we are today, and in 12 months we want to be here. Be it improving revenue, reducing cost, restructuring how we're going to market to our customers. And that's usually when I get brought in by a large company to run a division on an interim basis until they figure out what they want to do, and that's how I earn a lot of what I do at Gray Cat. That's the first step I take with them. I usually sit down with everyone that's working in that division. I interview them. I say what's working, what's not working. If we had to start with a blank piece of paper, how would you structure this company? And it's amazing what you learn from the people that are doing it day in and day out, and the consistent answers that you might get about what I call a broken pipe. We do it the same way every time. It just never works. Well, maybe we need to do it a different way. And so I generally do that interview process the first week that I'm working with a client, and I'll put together a 10, 15, 20 page report that really gives me the roadmap. This is what we want to accomplish. I heard this broken pipe over here like 6 times from people.
Right.
Maybe we should address that, and then we can get that complaint out of the way, and we can be moving forward.
So
And then I follow that roadmap
So you're typically meeting with leadership and subordinates, that sort of thing,
Absolutely.
just to get a full picture?
across the board from every
Okay.
department. So merchandising, marketing, they're in warehousing, operations, sales team. You get a different perspective from each of those divisions.
Right.
And sometimes they're very consistent, and a lot of times they're very inconsistent. What the sales team thinks is a big issue, the operations team thinks is, it's running smoothly. Well, I don't understand why they're upset about
Right.
that. It's because these guys aren't getting paid commission. That's a big problem.
Right.
That type of thing.
Sure.
So.
Well, that's awesome. Well, we'll talk about your book here towards the end, but I think what we can do is just go ahead and, even though you've got a lot of valuable content to high-level CEOs and CFOs, COOs, we're really geared towards when you're starting a business, the 5 things you really need to focus on and have in place. So we'll jump right into that. What's number 1?
The first one is you got to have a plan. I can't stress that enough. When I started Gray Cat 15 years ago, I actually sat down and wrote a 23-page business plan that I still use today, and that I followed relatively closely. I mean, you're always going to have some tangential
Sure.
movements, but I'll tell you how I generate business for Gray Cat is basically in that business plan. So I think that's critical. So you have to figure out, all right, how am I going to get customers? So what's my marketing plan, or if I have an item that I'm selling, what is my merchandising plan? You got to think about logistically, how am I going to operate my business? What do I need to hire people? Can I do it remotely? What are some of the things that you have to, and how do you manage your expenses along the way? I work out of my house. I didn't feel like I needed to go out and hang a shingle someplace and pay rent. I can work out of my house. I work from planes. I'm very mobile. With regard to that,
Right.
And then how do you keep track of your customer base? How do you go out and find new customers? What's going to be your way of doing it? I'm a one-man band. I have to be very stealth and very how should I say, specific in how I'm going out to market. I do a lot through social media, mostly LinkedIn, and that's how I get my name out there. I just did a speech in Chicago on Friday, and I posted a little snapshot of it on LinkedIn. I had over 2,000 views and 30 comments. And
That's awesome.
And people, and I actually this morning, someone was in the audience. They wanted to hire me to speak in Illinois at the end of June, but I've got business already that was on conflict, so I couldn't do it.
Gotcha.
But that's how it kind of feeds itself. So how
Sure.
do you get all those customers coming in?
Right.
So
So number 1, obviously business plan. You got to have a, before you build a house, you got to have the architect draw up the design. So you got to know what you're doing before you start. So what would you say number 2?
how do you get in front of people the most cost effectively and time effectively way? And again, I write a lot of blogs that get posted in industry magazines that I target. I spend a lot of time in the quick service restaurant industry as well as the convenience store restaurant or convenience store industry. I've had 85 articles published.
Wow.
I've spoken in front of 40% of all the state-run convenience store associations. So that's a very effective way that I get out in front of people.
Building your brand.
I get up in front of people and talk for an hour. It's a 1-hour infomercial on what Gray Cat Enterprises can do for the people in the audience. Not only do people in the audience want to hire me to speak, but they'll want to hire me to do consulting work for them. That to me is a very effective way for me to get in front of the people that could possibly hire me
Right.
to do that.
That makes a lot of sense.
And it's a combination of all those things, because a lot of entrepreneurs that I talk to, they go, what's the one thing that you do? I said, I don't do just one thing. I write blogs. I have 3 books that I've published. I do a lot of public speaking that makes sense for me to be in front of those audiences. I'm active on LinkedIn, but I'm not overbearing on LinkedIn. And I'm constantly building up the network. Believe it or not, I've got a new client in Chicago that I started with last year that was recommended to me by a consultant that we hired at a company that I worked at in 1999.
Wow.
I hadn't spoken to Len in 20 years, and Len, out of the blue, reaches out to me. He goes, I see John on LinkedIn all the time. I know he's a retail expert. This is the guy you should talk to. And sure enough, they flew me into Chicago to speak to him, and I've been working with him for almost a year.
20 years after the fact.
20 years after the fact.
Which, you know, it's funny. I was just having this conversation with someone who's young in business, and I just said, there's no substitute for patience. You know, you don't go out and plant seeds and get a harvest tomorrow. You know, you gotta work it, and you gotta pay your price.
Yep.
And you better be patient, or you're just not going to make it. So
Yep.
I love hearing stories like that, because it always reminds me that, you know, someone I did networking with 8 years ago, all of a sudden I finally get a lead, you
Yep.
know, someone that needs security. So that's awesome.
And you'd be surprised, 95% of my business in the last 7 or 8 years has come from LinkedIn.
Wow.
95%.
That's awesome.
My biggest client right now, I met on LinkedIn close to 12 years ago, and I sent her just a introductory email. We had a conversation in the fall of that year, didn't hear from her back. I just planted the seed.
Sure.
And in June, she called me and said, we need you, and I don't have time to go find anyone else. Would you be interested in working with us? And I didn't even meet her until 2 months after they had already signed an agreement with me and had
awesome.
engaged me. And I've been working off and on with her for 11 to 12 years.
Well, let me ask you this: that my gut tells me that you made the introduction. It was a positive introduction, but you kept producing content. You were consistent, persistent, and even though someone's not engaging with you necessarily,
Yep.
they're seeing your content.
Yep.
You're always there. You're consistent. You got, you know, great message. She may have been reading a lot of your content, and when the opportunity comes up, you've paid that price for all that time, so you're top of mind.
It could very well have been that. And also, it's very rare that someone will reach out to me and I don't try to help them in some fashion. I got a meeting tomorrow, as a matter of fact, downtown Raleigh, with a woman that reached out to me with her resume, and she's interested in pursuing a marketing role within Raleigh in a different company. And so I said, you know what, I'll see what I can do. She gave me a list of companies. I gave her a few contacts. I sent some emails out to some people. Just, you know, what did I invest? 5 minutes.
Right.
I'm going to be downtown tomorrow, so I'll just shake her hand and say, hello, it's nice to meet you in
Right.
person. Somewhere down the road, if she gets a great job, awesome. If I get something out of it, that's a bonus.
But you're just looking to add value to
Yep,
people, and
that's
it definitely
that's a
comes back.
bonus.
That's awesome.
So
So I think we're on 3 now.
we're on
All
3.
right, all right.
Let's see what
So
number
we got
3 would be.
you got to have a plan, and then you got to know how you're going to get to market.
Yep.
While you're thinking about that real quick, I will tell you that I can't tell you how many in the security industry, how many technicians think they're going to go start a security company, that they don't understand. You just being a good installer doesn't mean you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
You got to not only be good at that, but you have to learn how to get in front of people. You have to compete. You have to know how to sell. So
The next biggest one is
all right.
you got to perform. That's what it comes down to it. I've got a story that I tell quite often. There was a company in Boston that somehow I got connected with them, and they needed help with their coffee program in their convenience stores. Global partners. No one's ever heard of this company, and they're the 147th largest company in the United States. $17 billion company.
Jeez.
Oil transportation company that just happens to own some convenience stores. They own 300 company operated, and they deliver fuel to about 1,500 others. They contracted me for 90 days to help solve their coffee issue. I did that project, and then they got to know me a little bit over those 90 days. And they sat me down at about day 75, and they said, "Hey, what are you doing next year?" And I said, "I'm open. I can help you guys." They go, "We got a number of projects. We want to put you on an annual retainer because you have a lot that you can bring to the table." So a 90-day contract. I must have performed during those 90 days for them to offer me a year contract. That extended all the way for 42 months. So it was a 90-day contract that turned into 42 months and 11 different projects, culminating with me managing their capital discretionary capital projects, new store builds, remodels, and everything. It was about $30 million budget that they had me running outside the company
Right.
and interfacing with all the internal people.
Nice.
The existing contract, the woman I was telling you about that I met on LinkedIn, was a 6-month contract. I'm now completing my 31st month with them.
Wow.
So what that tells me is not only do you have to have a plan, you have to know how to find these people, but when you get the business, you got to perform. And when you
Execute.
perform, they don't want to lose you. So they constantly are redoing your contract so you hang out
Right.
and with them a little bit longer because you're adding value.
So fake it till you make it, forget about it. You got to make it. You just got to make it happen.
You just
And,
make it happen.
you know, business is results orientated. It's the bottom line.
Absolutely.
And,
And you'd be surprised that clients don't really know what they want. They know they need help in a specific area, and then you go in and you're working with them and you uncover another opportunity and another opportunity and another opportunity, and you point those out and maybe you connect the dots for them that perhaps they're just too close to it. They can't see it with a fresh set of eyes. And you go in there and you go, we could do it this way. And they're like, oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. And then you kind of move in that direction. And before you know it, you're so embedded in various parts of their business in a positive way. It's not
Right.
like you're a mole and you're
Sure.
trying to work your way in. You just know that you can add value in a lot of different areas. And now they know you can add value and they keep you around.
That's awesome. Well, that's definitely the name of the game. You got to add value.
Yep.
And you know, one of my favorite sayings that I've never heard anybody else say it, but it's when you give maximum value, you'll never have to worry about minimum wage.
Right.
You know, so
Right.
so that's number 3, and number 4. You got anything in mind there?
You know what? A lot of people always say to me, aren't you afraid of what you do? You know, you're an entrepreneur, you know, and I've been thinking about this lately, like in the last 6 months. I go, no, actually, I feel more secure today than I did at my corporate job. Because if you think about it, I probably have 4 clients. I sit on 3 different boards. I'm a board of director on 3 different companies right now. So I go to board meetings and things like that. And I got, 3 or 4 other clients. I said they would all have to simultaneously fire me on the same day for me to be out of work.
Right.
So I actually have more security. Someone could let me go, which is the nature of my business. You don't stay with, I've never had a client more than, 42 months was the longest. And then what I've been working with now, it kind of starts, stops. This latest stint was, 31 months. You don't have clients for 15 years. It just doesn't happen that way. And what is probably the hardest part for entrepreneurs to understand is you can't be offended when someone says, we're done with you. We're done.
Right.
Thanks. Everything's been great, but we're moving in a different direction. We got a CEO who doesn't believe in consultants. We've got this, that, and you
Sure.
just got to let that roll off your back. And I'll tell you, I was probably a little bit more, I guess a little bit more shaken up by it, I guess early on in my
yeah.
15 years. And now I've come to expect it. I keep on waiting for the phone call saying, hey, we're done with you. We've had budget cuts. We've had
Right.
these outside things that happen.
Right.
It's no different than when you lose your job as a full-time employee, except
Sure.
I always have something to fall back on because I have some other areas of business that are coming in.
Right.
So,
So it's safe to say, good principle. The only constant is change.
yeah, absolutely.
You know, so you got to deal with it and roll with it.
And you got to have the right, I guess, mindset. I'm not one who likes to do the same thing over and over and over again. I like the challenge. I like what I call walking into the abyss and kind of going, what's next? And sometimes if I've been working with a client a long time, I kind of go, wow, maybe something different would be cool. Now it seems like when I get to the 3 and 4 year stage with a client, it's kind of like, this has been good.
A little too routine.
And I think I'm going to, move into another direction. Some clients I just absolutely, my current client list right now is amazing. I mean, just absolutely amazing. The people are great. They treat you great. I have 0 complaints with any of my clients today. I love working with them. So I'm in a very happy place right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the last one, number 5. What would you say is number 5 to round out all these good nuggets?
You got to work your butt off.
Hard work.
I may be sitting here and you might be going, man, this guy's got it made. But I'll tell you, it's been a lot of work.
I know how much you travel. I mean, we've
Yeah.
known each other for a while
Yeah.
now, and I can't tell you how often, hey, John, you want to come go do this or that?
Right.
I'm on a plane into Boston. There's 10 feet of snow there, you know,
Yeah.
and this and that. So Not to cut you off, but
No, but absolutely. Last year I flew 200,000 miles, 186 segments. This year I've already hit 85 segments, and it's May. You know, and I'll hit close to 200,000 miles again.
Wow.
It's a lot of nights away. You know, fortunately my son is older, so he's out of college now. It's not like I have little ones at home, so it's I didn't travel as much when he was younger. So it's a lot of work. And the woman I'm dating, she's always saying, first of all, I don't know how you do it physically, and then secondly, I don't know how you keep sharp with all these meetings and going from place to place and 3 different time zones, and intellectually, how do you stay sharp to be able to do all the stuff and multitask it and everything like that? And I've learned to compartmentalize everything. So if I know I have a 90-minute flight, I pick a project that I can complete in those 90 minutes. I know if I have a 4-hour flight, I pick bigger projects that require me just to not have phones ringing, not have emails coming in.
Focused.
I can knock out stuff. When I travel, I actually am probably more productive than when I'm here, because when I'm here, I'm kind of like, I think I want to go out and garden a little bit or something along those lines, or go hit
throw
some
this load of
golf.
laundry in, or
Exactly.
caught up on stuff. I've
But
been
when I'm
guilty of that.
traveling, I'm very focused, and it keeps me hyper productive on the road.
That's good.
Which keeps me ahead of it. But if I were to step back and look at it, I'd probably go, holy cow, that's a lot of travel, a lot of nights away, a lot of expense reports, tracking that you gotta keep track of. All of that stuff, it's tiring from the outside, but for some reason I just kind of like it.
Well, there is no substitute for work ethic.
No.
I mean, if you're going to accomplish anything great, you're going to have to work your butt off. You know, anyway, to be a 1%er, you got to do what 1%ers do, and there's no substitute for paying the price.
Yep.
You know, but so that was our 5 things, and I certainly appreciate that. And we've got a couple books here that I'm asking John to please mention these, and highly recommended to get some of these. And if you want to talk about these real quick.
Props here.
There we go.
There you go. So if you're a retailer, I have 2 manuals for you. One's local store marketing for retail. It has probably 22 ideas in it. You don't have to read the book cover to cover. You just pick the idea you want. There's 3 pages to it. It's a great, helpful. If you get one idea out of it,
Well worth it.
It's well worth it. This one is the grand opening manual. So if you're opening up a new store and you've never done it before, this gives you the step-by-step way of promoting your store, how to make your store really sing. Then this last book, I just wrote this one last year. Game-changing strategies for retailers. It is not specific to retail, but there's a lot of things that obviously are in here. But if you want to know, what should I think about when I do my strategic plan, or what are some of the financial reports that I should use, or KPIs, key performance indicators, what are some of the things there? How do I manage if I am in retail, marketing, operations, merchandising, facilities management, capital management? It's all in here. But this is a good book if you're thinking about starting a business and you want to understand all of the pieces of a business. There's a lot of good snippets in here that you can read. And again, it's kind of written in a fashion that you can go and read the 2 or 3 pages. You don't have to read it cover to cover. But all of these are available on my website, Brian, graycatenterprises.com, and it's GRAY catenterprises.com.
Glad you pointed that out.
You can go, this one in particular is on Amazon if you want to get, and these other 2 are through Lulu, which is a local Raleigh publisher.
Awesome.
So,
well, thank you so much for your time today, John, and hopefully you guys got as much out of that as I did. And thanks for your time again.
my pleasure.
Have a good
Thank
one.
you.